full attendance. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. And so I'll call it to order the THPRD, the Budget Committee work session for April 21st, 2021. Jessica, can you please take roll? Are we taking roll?
I apologize. My
that's okay.
computer was muting me. Heidi Edwards.
I'm here.
Elizabeth Edwards.
I'm here.
Samira Godil.
Here.
Ashley Hartmeyer Prigg.
Here.
Wendy Kroger.
She may be muted. She's staying here.
I see her logged on.
She's shaking her head. I think she's having technical difficulties.
Okay.
Correct? Yeah. She's shaking yes.
Leland.
Here.
Here.
Suzanne Mather.
Here.
Felicita Monteblanco.
Here.
Alfredo Moreno.
I'm here.
Tia Ping.
Here.
Jessica, we have the wrong screen up.
Thank you, Jessica, for taking roll. Moving on, I will now open the floor for a motion to approve the February 24th, 2021 minutes as submitted. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Is Felicita happy to make that motion?
I will second that.
And this is Tia. Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you both. Okay, and to kick things off with some opening comments, I just want to say thank you everybody for being here and this volunteer capacity that you're in as budget committee members. We had a lot of amazing questions that came out of your review of the proposed budget, and thank you to those who are returning and those who are new to the budget committee, and to all of our staff. I told you a little earlier, but just we need to thank you because you have been keeping the district running through thick and thin, and it's amazing the work that you do. So thank you for all of that. I also wanted to just, well, I'll wait. I'll let Doug make his opening remarks because he might say a little of what I want to say. But Doug, do you want to go ahead and say a few things? Opening comments?
Perfectly fine. If we don't mind, if we could formally actually take a vote on the minutes just for the record.
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
No.
So there was a motion to approve and seconded. If we can go ahead and take a vote. And Jessica, do we want to do that hands raised or roll call? What works best?
I apologize. I'm muted, I believe.
That's okay.
Am I muted?
You're on now.
Okay, great. Just all approved would be great, and any abstentions.
Okay. All those who approve, if you want to raise your hand or say aye with your audio on, please do so now.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstention?
This is Suzanne Masser. I'm going to abstain as I was not at the meeting in February.
Okay. Thank you. So motion is approved and passes. Thank you for the reminder there, Doug, to move that along with a vote. And so now we'll transition on to you, Doug, for opening remarks.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone this evening to our annual work session. This step in the budget review and approval process is designed to be interactive as best as we can via online here between staff and the budget committee. To that end, you will hear departmental budget reports from each of the directors responsible for their departments, and then have an opportunity along the way to ask questions of their proposed budgets. Our budget is driven by the district's values and specific budget priorities established by the board of directors for the upcoming fiscal. There are three core values that I want to touch on that, of course, have a very distinct impact on the budget making process and the proposed budget before you. The first, of course, is equity, with a key emphasis on racial equity. This includes ensuring that the Park District serves our entire community and eliminates barriers that could limit participation from some segments of our community. Sustainability is the second core value. This includes maintaining and enhancing our services, of course, for our parks, trails, natural areas, and facilities. It also is about conservation with regard to our natural environment, acknowledging the impact that we have, both positive and negative. As well, within sustainability, it includes ensuring our district is operating in a manner that is financially sustainable. The last core value is community vision. We will be responsive to community vision by being welcoming and inclusive, providing play for everyone, providing natural spaces, and making facilities accessible and safe. All three core values are what drive the upcoming budget process and operations. The board's emphasis and guidance to staff for the upcoming fiscal year is to focus on racial equity. This supports the recognition that there are systemic barriers that perpetuate inequities that have for decades been embedded within government systems in our country. You will hear more information tonight about our budget equity process and about some of the ways we are operationalizing equity throughout the district. In October, this past October, the board completed a planning process for the upcoming fiscal year and provided the following key priorities for the budget process. The first is investing in technology. Secondly is planning for future natural areas, facility and trail needs, and funding resources. And lastly is investing in our employees and volunteers. You will hear more tonight about the activities proposed to support these priorities in the upcoming fiscal year. We will conclude tonight with a review of the proposed capital budget line items for 21-22 fiscal year. The capital committee itself worked hard to ensure that we were focused on equity in their decision making as the proposed capital budgets were developed. You will also hear about our strategy for addressing the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic for the upcoming budget, given the continued uncertainties surrounding the regulations and closures that the district has faced over the last year and continues to face, of course, as we move in the upcoming fiscal, as recent as this week, having more adjustments being made by operations. We know this is another unusual budget year, and we are proposing a regular budget in the same manner as we did for the current fiscal year. This has allowed us to closely manage our operations and ensure that we are able to provide the programs and events that we want to provide when we are sure it is in fact safe to do so. We will continue to provide the board with quarterly revised operating plans to ensure that we are operating in a manner that is financially stable while addressing the uncertainties we continue to face. We have provided time for your questions throughout the evening, as well as the time at the end of the meeting to hear from the committee about discussions you would like to have on certain topics, as well as recommendations, of course. And now I'm going to swing it back Heidi's way to provide an opportunity for public comment.
Thank you, Doug. And now is the time that is set aside on our agenda for public comment. I understand there's no public comment that's been received for this meeting. Is that correct? Can I confirm that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, I hope the public will join us in this virtual meeting, whether live now or recorded. I do want to just reflect back on, thank you, Doug, for your comments and your opening comments, and to reflect upon, part of what we have dedicated ourselves to is making sure that our employees are supported. And this, we had this budget work session a couple years ago that we said we want to invest in our employees, and they're the ones that keep this district running. So I just want to reflect on the challenges that they have faced in keeping the district running throughout the pandemic. But then also, you know, our interests in supporting technical opportunities for the district as well as the natural areas. So with that, we'll go ahead and move along to agenda number 5. Lori Baker, our Director of Business Services, will now provide information on the district's planning process. And I just want to mention to folks, if you have a comment or a question, Lori has set aside time at the end of each of these pieces for us to ask questions. And so if you do have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. Hopefully you all know how to raise your hand. For me, it's the little raise hand up. It's up at the top for me within my console. I don't know if it's up at the top or down at the bottom for you, but just remind folks, go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, and there is time at the end of each of these sections to do so. So Lori, I'm going to give it to you.
Thank you, Heidi. Good evening. And I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I know it's a beautiful night tonight, sunny and 80 degrees. So I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us and go through our budget. So the district has a comprehensive planning process, which begins with our vision and our mission. We completed our visioning outreach process and adopted the Vision Action Plan in September of 2020. The visioning work will be the basis for our updates to the comprehensive plan that are currently underway. The strategic plan goals and objectives for the district and the functional plans include guidelines, process descriptions, standards, and strategies to be used. Using the planning process to inform priorities, the board holds a fall planning session to identify district priorities for the upcoming budget process. Out of the board's fall planning, staff works to create a proposed budget that addresses the priorities in a fiscally balanced manner. The proposed budget being presented tonight represents the final staff proposal. The budget committee can collectively make changes to the proposed budget, which will be reflected in the budget that's approved by the budget committee. The final step in the budget process is the adoption by the board of directors, where again, the board can make limited changes to the approved budget, which will be reflected in the adopted budget. Next, our board president, Ashley Hartmeyer-Prigg, will share information on the district's values and budget priorities. Ashley?
Thank you, Lori. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. At our virtual retreat, the board confirmed for the second year our district values of equity, sustainability, and community vision. All 3 values are important to the district and are addressed in a variety of ways throughout the proposed budget. The value of sustainability recognizes that it is our daily responsibility to be good stewards of our resources. This value addresses both environmental and financial sustainability. The district will be responsive to community vision by being welcoming and inclusive, providing play for everyone, providing natural spaces, and making facilities accessible and safe. For the proposed budget, the board's emphasis and guidance to staff was to focus on racial equity. Like we heard from Doug, we have a recognition that there are systemic barriers that perpetuate inequities that have for decades been deeply embedded within government systems in our country. Strategies specifically designed to address racial inequity need to be prioritized. The board has asked staff to focus on racial equity as the budget is developed or was developed, and to continue that focus going forward. The district has a long history of work to support marginalized groups, such as our Access for All initiatives that have focused on people experiencing disabilities. This is important work that must continue, and it's highlighted in the proposed budget as well. The focus on racial equity is a matter of emphasis. It is meant to encourage and inspire staff to work creatively to bolster our support for racial equity, not at the expense of other efforts, but to lift our overall impact. The board also recommended that the district continue for a second year with the district's budget priorities, investing in our future through technology, planning for future facility and trail needs, and funding resources, and investing in our people. And we've heard that that's both employees and volunteers. I just wanted to add a little bit more. We heard in our February update, we've been hearing throughout the year the impacts of COVID on our district, and those are both financial impacts and health and well-being and emotional and workload impacts. And so while we plan for the normal budget, or a regular budget, we do know that the effects of COVID are going to continue to impact us. As Doug mentioned, right, our county is going back to high risk on Friday. And every time changes like that happen, our staff have to adjust. And our staff has done so they've been nimble and, have handled all of this so well. But I just want to recognize how much additional work is already going. I know as I was reading through the budget and reflecting on the size of the teams that make this budget or make this district come to life and all of the care that we give to our community, it's a small team. So I just want us to keep in mind tonight as we're having our discussions around the budget that while we're being presented, a regular budget, this is not regular times, and the impacts of this pandemic will be felt for this year and probably a while into the future. So I know it's a little bit of divergent, but I just wanted to highlight that tonight as we consider and we discuss together. So I'm going to hand it back over to Lori as she will provide more information on the equity impacts included in the proposed budget.
Thank you, Ashley. Our review of department budgets this evening will include discussion about the equity impacts included in our proposed budget. In addition to our efforts to address equity in our department budgets, the proposed budget includes $150,000 in targeted equity funding, which is allocated as followed. A paid internship program will provide funding for BIPOC youth to receive paid internships to work in various departments throughout the district. The program will include partnering with community partners to identify participating youth. These will be one-year part-time paid internships with the goal of funding 4 to 6 internships, with funding of $60,000 included in the proposed budget in the Recreation Services Division. Mobile programming for both the Rec Mobile and the Nature Mobile funding will allow these programs to continue with programming to reach underserved populations. These programs will continue partnership with BSD food distribution sites and low-income housing providers. Funding included in the proposed budget in the Recreation Services Division for these programs is $40,000. The Communications Department will be completing their work developing a language access policy for the district in fiscal year 21-22. This will be a data-driven analysis that articulates what district documents require translation and into what languages. It's anticipated that there will be an upfront investment in translation needed to support implementation of this policy. The proposed budget includes $30,000 to support these additional translation services. And last but not least, a staff-driven equity grant program will be created, which will be providing a minimum of 4 grants to support equity-related programs district-wide. The proposed budget includes $20,000 to support this grant program in the Business Services Division. This is just the beginning of our proposed equity funding in the budget. We will be discussing equity throughout our presentation this evening as we review the proposed general fund budget and the division equity impacts. Next slide, please. Sustainability includes maintaining and enhancing our service levels in our parks, trails, natural areas, and facilities. It also includes the things we do to keep our district financially stable. Within this area, we will be implementing the board's pension funding policy and have included $8.5 million in funding in accordance with the policy. The policy will allow for intergenerational equity and provide financial stability for the district in the long term. We will also continue to fund land acquisition capital for quality properties. Also, we'll continue to operate under a grant strategy that prioritizes the district's needs and matches them against available funding opportunities. The proposed budget allows for environmental education programs via our Nature Center programming. And as is our practice, the proposed budget also includes increasing maintenance funding to keep up with the growth in park acreage as bond and SDC projects are completed. As part of our discussion on environmental sustainability, Bruce Barbarash is here to discuss the district's approach to climate resilience. Bruce?
Good evening. I'm Bruce Barbarash. I'm the Park District's Nature and Trails Manager. And climate resilience is the ability to anticipate, prepare for, and respond to hazardous events, trends, or disturbances related to climate. And because climate is a big topic, we're going to be collaborative in our approach to that. We'll work with the City of Beaverton to implement their climate action plan, which covers portions of what we do, as well as broader topics valuable to the whole community. A focus for us will be on natural areas as well as trails as transportation. We'll also offer our parks and facilities as refuges for the community. Before COVID, our facilities served as warming and cooling shelters for the public, and we'll do that again. We'll also offer up gyms or other facilities as emergency response centers. And because addressing climate change involves what we do and what we buy, we're in the process of updating our sustainable purchasing procedure. The new version will address social, environmental, and financial components, whereas the original focused mostly on environmental. Next slide, please. New parks, as well as changes to existing properties, will incorporate climate response. This includes developing neighborhood parks within walking distance to cut down on driving and to increase health and community livability. And as part of the designs, we'll treat stormwater on site, which helps with water quality downstream. We'll also design with more drought-tolerant plants and use drip irrigation. For natural areas, we're creating new planting palettes to select more climate-resistant strains of trees and shrubs. Park maintenance practices will also shift to reduce or eliminate irrigation, saving water and resources. In natural areas, an increased emphasis will be made on fire reduction and management activities. We'll continue to take proactive and ongoing measures to address storm events, including tree safety, snow removal, and protecting buildings from the elements. Finally, we'll support our ongoing strategic energy management activities, including lighting upgrades and more efficient heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. Where feasible, we'll integrate more long-lived or low-toxicity materials in construction and continue our practice of using sustainable cleaning products. And now I'm going to pass things on to Holly.
Thanks, Bruce. I'll be speaking to community vision. The district's commitment to responding to the community vision is off to a great start this year. The work that we're doing to align our community vision goals with our comprehensive plan update is a sign of that commitment. It's a powerful statement for the district to frame our primary policy document around the community vision goals. The work that the planning department is then leading to weave the community vision actions into the district's future functional plan updates ensures that we are being transparent, holding ourselves accountable, and meeting the highest standards of public engagement. It is exciting to see the district's work take shape as we work collectively as an organization to move our community vision ideas into action by embedding the public priorities into our planning processes moving forward. It is also a testament to our commitment to equity that the root of this work, led by our Vision Task Force, was overseen by this truly diverse group of community leaders who helped guide the project to reach our inclusivity goals. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lori.
Thank you, Holly. As Ashley discussed earlier, the board has formalized 3 priorities for our budget in the upcoming year. The first involves investing in technology. Some of the key initiatives included in the proposed budget in this area include continuation of the implementation project for the new financial software for the district, with a carry forward capital budget of $598,000 included in the capital budget. The district's implementation team completed phase 1 of this project this year and is currently live on the new employee timekeeping and payroll components within the Tyler Munis system. The information services budget includes funding for a project manager position. This position will support the ongoing project management of the financial system implementation and will also begin evaluating business needs associated with the replacement of the district's registration system. Work will continue on the implementation of the electronic records management system, and we will keep up to date on data security issues, network security, and compliance activities to ensure that our patron records are safe. Next slide, please. As part of our long-term planning process, we've begun work on the update to the district's comprehensive plan. This will allow us to continue our long-term planning focus with consideration of the Vision Action Plan that was recently completed. In the Park Services Division, work will continue on completion of bond capital projects and SDC projects. We will also begin working on our facility functional plan once the comprehensive plan is complete. We will also continue our emphasis on grant strategy to look to obtain additional funding to support capital programs and continue funding of programs and events while we're continuing to address the impact of the pandemic. Next slide, please. Our employees and our volunteers are the foundation to the success of the district. We recognize the importance of investing in our employees and our volunteers. Some of the major initiatives included in the proposed budget in support of our employees and volunteers are $8.5 million in retirement plan funding, consistent with our board-approved pension funding policy. Implementation of the NeoGov Learn online training system to provide a catalog of course content in both English and Spanish. And providing diversity, equity, inclusion, and access training to our employees, and converting all regular part-time positions to full-time. Next slide, please. So at this point, I know that was a lot of topics, but if we have any questions on the planning process, the values, priorities, sustainability, we're happy to take those questions at this point.
And if you'd like to raise your hand, I'm going to try to keep my eyes on those hands that raise, or if anybody notices a hand raise that I don't see, please let me know. And
Suzanne?
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I was just curious how many part-time positions you've converted to full-time, regular.
Let me quickly jump in and see if I can find you the exact number. My apologies.
Okay. I was thinking it was just like one or two, so I didn't realize it was more than that. Thanks.
It's more than one or two.
Lori, I have that information.
Do you have that, Aisha?
Thanks, Aisha.
Yes. I will say, though, that at one point in time, several years back, about 8 years ago, sorry, I'll turn on my camera, we had over 30 RPT positions, and these are regular part-time positions that work between 30 and 35 hours a week. Over years past, we have worked to convert those positions to full-time so that we can get additional programming time out of those positions, and also to support our centers. And so I believe in this budget year, we had 8 positions, and those would all be converted to full-time. So going from that 30 to 35 hours a week to 40-hour-a-week positions.
Actually, there was an FTE count of 9.65. So I believe that's 12 positions that ended up converting.
I may be thinking of the ones
Thank you.
that were not the vacancies. So that could work. Yes, 12.
I finally got to the right page. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Aisha and Lori. Are there other questions? And forgive me, I'm looking, I see Elizabeth. Do you have your hand raised? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hey, thank you so much. I more just have a quick comment, and I know there will be time for more later. I've been super impressed at the quality of all the information and the thoroughness. And one thing that I hadn't seen in the thick binder was under climate resilience, including refugees and emergency facilities for warming and cooling shelters. And just to kind of give a shout out that I think that's awesome that that's part of the consideration that the district is giving in doing that planning around climate resilience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And this is the thick binder since we're not in person. Those of you who are joining us virtually, this is the thick binder that the budget committee works through. And yeah, and I think there were 19 or close to 19 pages of questions and answers from the budget committee as well regarding this budget. So thank you for your question and your comment there, Elizabeth. Anybody else have questions or even comments? Alfredo, hello. Go ahead.
There we go. Hi, just really quick follow-up to the regular part-time to full-time. What's the benefit impact of that? Is that an increase in benefits, or?
It is an increase in benefits.
Yeah, and let's have maybe Christine can speak into this some. Part of this is recognizing the net inequity of having people that look, work right alongside full-time people that aren't quite there, and thus have less benefits than full-time people, and yet they could be in a normal year riding in the same maintenance vehicle side by side, but they're not quite there. So I don't know, Christine, if you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So this is something that has been a long-running equity issue and has been something that over time we have reduced. As Aisha said, we've reduced the number of RPT positions. And we were really excited in this year to be able to take a fresh look at that and say, you know what, let's do away with that entirely. So both full-time and RPT, these were bargaining unit positions. They are represented by our THPRD Employees Association. And we were really excited to be able to take that to them in labor management and share that in this budget, the proposed budget, all of our bargaining unit positions would have the same benefits. So what that means is instead of that prorated amount, which we did in the last contract negotiations, standardized it to 35 hours per week with a consistent 7/8 proration. So the math got kind of fun there. This time we're able to say, no, everyone's going to have access to that same paid time off, the same health benefit premium.
All right, thanks.
And I would say a big thanks, because one of our goals is to invest in the people that make this work happen and keep it happening. And I mean, this is news to my ears. Now, I want to open it up for more questions or comments. Okay. Lori or Doug, do you have anything else you want to add?
I guess I would just like to take a minute, and I was hoping Felicita might have had some comments about the budget equity. I think we're thrilled to be able to offer a proposed budget document that has that focus on equity. And we were very excited to be able to identify those specific projects, the $150,000 worth of projects for equity. I personally am very excited about the $20,000 that is in my budget that is for staff equity projects. We really felt strongly as a management team that there's going to be some really great ideas out there to help us to really kind of boost that piece of our business, and to be able to offer those funding sources to our staff and have them really be creative and help us with those ideas, I think is going to be a great experience, and it's going to be really, really good for the district. So.
Yeah, and I do see that Felicita's hand is raised, and I want to, yeah, I'll hand it over to you, and then I have something to say.
Thank you.
I'm trying to be quiet tonight because I feel like half the questions in that 16-page document are mine. So, of course, Lori, I'm thrilled with this equity work that we are committed to, that we continue to ask ourselves tough questions. We continue to commit and be better every year. Probably the piece that gets me most excited are these internships for our BIPOC youth. When Doug told me, and then he said, and they're paid, Felicita, I was like, yes, perfect. Like, that's what I was going to argue about. So I'm so thrilled. And I think too about as a large special district, as the largest park special district in the state, like the ripple effects of our work and what this means long term about diversity of Parks and Rec staff. Like, this is only positive. We're going to learn a ton. Our young people will learn a ton. So I'm thrilled. So thank you, Lori. If it's not clear, thank you, Lori.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I'll just make a comment that Felicita, you have been one of the lead changers here in the district to help us push racial and social justice and equity forward. So I need to give kudos to you, and you have helped us also to diversify and have further representation within not just our budget committee who is here tonight, and to hear the voices of all of our community, but within all of our community engagement. So I want to do a nice personal shout out to you, because this is the work that has to be done in our community. There are large organizations throughout the Portland metro area that are doing this work, and they are specifically calling out, how are you using your money and your budget to address racial equity, social justice issues, environmental justice. All of these things are critical to us as a board and as a district. So anyone else have any additional comments, questions? I'm looking for hands. It is way too soon for us to be moving on to the next agenda item, unless, well, I know that our staff has spent, I'll just reflect on the budget. This budget process is not a few months long. This is a year long, all year long, every year long process. So thank you to the team, Lori and your team, and then to leadership and management for continuing this work year round. It does seem like it is maybe sped up a little bit for us because we don't spend as much time with all of you on staff doing this work. But your thoroughness, I think, as Elizabeth was stating, your thoroughness with the documentation and the reflection and what you're proposing it says a lot for us. So I'm still going to keep it open to questions, and I see Ashley, your hand is up too.
I think I was responsible for the other half of the questions, and so I think sometimes sending them in advance makes me a little less inclined to take up time during the meeting. But the thing you don't get to see, Wendy taught me a trick when I joined the budget committee, right? And that's to use little stickies, and they go throughout my binder. But what you don't see, in addition to the questions that I sent, was all the places, yes, Felicita, is the hearts that I put, the this is awesome, right? And so sometimes I wish I could just like give you my packet back so you could see there's, I think that even in just 2 years, right, we have seen some real major changes, and we have seen our priorities come to life. And Heidi's right? A lot of people, there's kind of maybe a common phrase that's being said, right? Like, tell me what your values are, but show me your budget, right? And are you bringing those values to life in your budget? And I do think our values have always been coming to life in our budget, but this year especially, I see us being innovative, and I see us being so intentional about equity. And so thank you for everyone who really made a point, right, to plan it, to be intentional about equity, to bring our values to life, and to use money to reinvest in our community in such a representative and equitable way. So Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all that. Heidi, if I could add to, it's interesting because we did forward all of the questions and responses to the full budget committee, in an effort for not just transparency, but to enable everyone's conversation and discussion and working knowledge. Because again, if it's a question for one person, generally can be a question for others. But I do want to qualify that what we failed to forward out was every single one of you that forwarded questions our way also had some really nice complimentary lead-in statements of the work, acknowledging the work, acknowledging key emphasis areas, and and all that's really appreciated. I think it further qualifies the beauty of our agency is that we work as a team, and our board of directors, our budget committee, we consider you all part of the team as we're working through these processes, and certainly right now, within the midst of continual adaptation, it's critical that it enables us to serve the public in the best way we can.
Thank you, Doug. I see Tia has her hand up, her hand raised. Tia?
Trying to get my stuff to turn on. Okay.
I hear you now. I see you.
It's so slow, and my hands are like clammy, so like the buttons aren't working. But so yes, I echo everything that everybody said. These binders are beautiful. We win awards for our budgets. Our team is just so amazing for what they do and what they accomplish and bring together. So, I mean, we could spend the whole meeting having, praises to you guys, and it just still wouldn't be enough. I did have a few questions, and I did send it into my thing, and I'll probably bring it up later on during the meeting. So I just kind of wanted to prepare whenever that topic comes. But I know, Lori, you said you were really excited about the staff-driven equity grant, and like as far as I want to, and I had asked in one of the questions was, is there a community-driven one? And I don't know if it would come out from here, but I couldn't find it anywhere else. But the experts of marginalized and diverse groups are the people that represent them, right? Like, we can say all these things, but if we don't have somebody who's actually experienced that, have those life experience, they won't know. So I would challenge us to potentially maybe convert one of those grants, or challenge our community to create something that they want to see themselves, and or have us create a space where they can bring their ideas in that we can help support, and potentially use it as a pilot for future programming, where we challenge them to say, we have, $5,000, give us your best, thing of how we can best support you, whether that's like youth cricket, right, or something, or some other sport that we don't even know of, or helping to celebrate Ramadan or something like that. So, and Holly's turning on, I'm sure she has lots of things. But yes. So I would really love to see something that the community can just take on for themselves, that we just, that we can also use as a time to advertise ourselves, that we are here for you. You let us know what we need, and we will make that happen. And so I don't know if that's on the table or whatnot, or if that grant is appropriate, but that's just one thing to think about as we move forward with that.
Yeah, can I stop you just for a moment, not to interrupt? I'm just curious if Holly wants to chime in on that. If
I actually was going to call Holly in on that, because I have to apologize, Tia. I kind of missed the boat. Holly had a really great response to your question that I didn't catch last night before I logged off. And so it did not get included in your answers. So Holly, I'm going to hand it over to you, because I think you have a really good response to this and some great information that will help Tia to see what we are doing.
Tia, well said. Couldn't agree more. Co-production's always the way to go. We keep $45,000 in the communications budget. It is earmarked specifically for DEIA, and the biggest chunk of that is meant to seed our community-based partnerships work. So examples of how we've used those funds in the past year are our work with the Oregon Chinese Coalition, Venezuela's Voice, and our strategy is exactly what you talk about. We want to, it's a relational work. It is about making the space available, helping co-produce events, and helping community-based organizations, communities, and populations really utilize the space and hold events and do the things they want to do. So we absolutely spend our money that way out of the communications department budget. We've had a dream of not just doing some direct appointments, but seeding some grants as well. I don't know that that will happen this year just because of the pandemic life that we're living. Right. But I can promise you we will get there very, 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 very soon. But we are giving direct appointments away to community-based organizations.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
You're most welcome.
Tia, I know, do you have other questions too? Because this is the time for questions, and I do want to just recognize, I see Alfredo and Elizabeth with hands raised. Tia, do you have a couple of others?
Well, I was just going to say one more thing. As we, sustainability and conservation is kind of one of our top things. And I was, it was mostly the mowers that kind of, I would like to know a little bit more about that, because I know we said like electric doesn't work as well, or electric is more expensive. And then I think I saw for electric vehicles, we don't have the infrastructure to get there. And I just would like to know eventually I feel like it's always kind of money based that we choose not to do things but when we're touting that this is what one of our priorities are, I feel like we need to lead the way. And so I just would like to understand more, why are we not leading faster as we are replacing things, right? That we are not creating that infrastructure or not creating or figuring out ways to purchase things that are eco-green and reducing our carbon emissions.
Yeah, maybe if I can help on that one some, I think, what I hear you saying, Tia, is exactly what we're trying to do, and that is move as quickly as we can. But of course, we have some of those learning experiences when we discover that electric mowers have a hard time in wet conditions. And of course, in the Northwest, we have those, but we're really, we continue to adapt. We find appropriate uses so that it hasn't been a wasted investment. And at the same time, we know this to be true, that electric is coming along much quicker. So we anticipate it won't be long before those kind of issues are resolved. And, the vehicles, yes, and mowers have life, but it's not, under our conditions. We're our safety services vehicles, for instance, which are hybrids, 30,000 miles a year we put on them. So it's pretty substantial, and the replacement cycle does move pretty quick.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Tia, for your questions and comments. Alfredo, I saw that you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to know a little bit more about, I know there's a reorganization of the district divisions, adding park services, and all of that explanation in the book made sense. And I don't know if this is the exact right time to dig into this or not. I was just kind of curious more beyond the numbers. How has that reorganization been received, or what challenges or things have you seen through that, or what opportunities? I mean, you don't have to go super in depth if we're going to touch on that later, but I just was curious about that, having in the midst of experiencing one on my own in my professional career. So
yeah, certainly I can speak into that. The Park Services Director concept really is an evolution of the management team that existed years ago, in recognition that we lost two, one to retirement and one with layoff, and that process really left us with reassigning within the management team, including myself. So we're each of us carrying additional loads than the norm, but was perfectly appropriate within the COVID time period. Though we are not settled on the exact timing and mechanism for the new director concept, the regroup is really to have appropriate departments answering to the right levels and ensuring that they're getting clear direction from individuals who aren't carrying too many different departments. And so it's kind of it's difficult from one perspective, because we've increased the size of the management team by ensuring that we would both have the financial side and HR at the table, which has been very beneficial for us, Lori and Christine in this case. But in the process, we still lack an individual who kind of has that hard perspective of the long range planning all the way through facility management from the maintenance perspective. So the combination of those different departments led us to an area that we think is going to be more and more critical for the district moving forward, of understanding our assets, all of our facilities, all of our parks, long range planning perspectives, and of course, as you well know, the district is much like your employment agency, in that the real world is we are highly dependent on everyone else when it comes to future development. So our ability to partner and work together is absolutely critical. Having a lead there, we think, is an important step in that process.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Doug. Elizabeth, you've got your hand raised.
Just got to click on all the buttons here. All right, thank you so much. I had asked this in the written questions that I submitted before, and I just want to sort of flag it again here, especially when talking about equity, racial equity, and sustainability. And I know the district has plans for this, but looking ahead to next year's budget and the budget after that, I would love to see more key performance measures that actually are targeted toward making headway on equity and sustainability. And like I said, I know you all have plans to do more of that, but I just wanted to flag that while we're chatting.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I do appreciate you flagging that. We are in our infancy with these equity pieces in the budget, and we are in our infancy with tracking data. And we all know the importance of being able to hold ourselves accountable and track how we're doing. One of the key areas I think that you and I had talked about was in the procurement area, being able to track equity in purchasing. We do not have a financial system currently that will allow us to do that. We do have a financial system, however, that we are implementing that will allow us to be able to establish those tracking mechanisms and be able to report out on that information. It won't be for next year's budget because we are just starting into a process of implementing that financial system. That financial system will not be completely in place for another year. So it's going to take us a few years before we can really have a good process established to be able to track that information. We can set ourselves some goals for next year's budget for future years and the amount and percentages of equity in purchasing that we strive to reach, but it will be very difficult for us to give any actual numbers for a couple of years just because of the fact that we don't have those data systems developed. So, but I do agree. I think it's a perfectly good point, and it's definitely something that we're focusing on to make sure that we do hold ourselves accountable.
Thanks for that, Lori. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, and thank you, Elizabeth, too. You know, these pieces as it relates to the work that we're trying to do to implement change, real active change that our community demands, takes a little time, but us continuing to push that forward is really important. So I appreciate your question with that. And we are looking forward to, I mean, one of our goals as a board was to really invest in technology so that we could have these opportunities for that kind of data that's going to help us make better decisions as well. So are there any other questions or comments? Because this would be the time to ask them.
And we'll have several other times throughout the evening where you can ask questions about the things that we're presenting. So I don't want anyone to feel like this is their only opportunity.
All right. So should I hand it back over? I'm looking at my agenda here.
It's me.
Okay, go, Lori.
All right, next slide, please. So as Doug discussed earlier, the pandemic has had a significant impact on the district over the past year. When we adopted our budget for the current fiscal year 2020-2021, we made the decision to adopt a regular operating budget that did not consider the impact of the COVID closures. We knew that this would require management to closely monitor operations and financial results, but would also allow us the ability to continue to address circumstances as they occurred. We have managed this budget closely, along with providing quarterly revised operating plans to our board. Given that the uncertainties related to the pandemic are likely to continue into the upcoming fiscal year, we're taking the same approach with the 2021-2022 budget, and we'll be proposing a full budget. We plan to continue to complete revised operating plans during the period that the district is impacted with closures and operating restrictions related to the pandemic. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of our proposed general fund budget. We're proposing a budget of $64.5 million in our general fund, which is about 2% higher than the current year budget of $63.4 million. We will be reviewing each division's proposed expenditure budget later this evening. Next slide, please. Total resources in the proposed budget are $64.5 million. The largest overall source of funding for the general fund is property tax revenue, which is 56.4% of our proposed budget. Property tax revenues are estimated at $36.4 million for the fiscal year, which is a 4.5% increase, which includes 3% for the regular assessed value increases that occur annually under Oregon law, and 1.5% for growth related to new properties in the district for the year. We are estimating that property tax will continue to be 95% collectible in the upcoming year, which is consistent with prior year assumptions. We have not experienced a decline in the collectability of taxes in the current year. Program fees and charges make up approximately 21.5% of the general fund resources. As we discussed previously, the proposed budget is developed under a regular operation scenario. Program fees have held relatively consistent with the current operating budget, and they're developed using class minimum sizes. We don't anticipate, however, that our actual operating results will be close to those numbers. So that's the big part of the revised operating forecast planning that we're doing. Other resources included in the general fund budget include carry forward cash from the current year, grants for operating and capital costs, and other revenues such as facility rent and interest earnings. Next slide, please. This slide shows the breakdown of the general fund expenditures by type. Personnel services is the largest part of our spending at $42.3 million, which is 65% of the overall general fund expenditure budget. Personnel services have increased by $1.6 million over the current year budget, due in large part to the large increase in unemployment taxes, which has led to an over $700,000 cost increase to the district. Contractual salary increases for non-represented employees, and increases to medical insurance costs are also included in the proposed budget. Materials and services of $10.8 million have increased by 9% compared to the current year budget, due in part to inflationary adjustments for cleaning supplies and increased utility rates. Capital outlay of $5.7 million is 9% of the general fund budget. We will be reviewing proposed capital spending later this evening. Next slide. This is a summary of expenditures proposed in the general fund budget. We'll be reviewing these costs by division in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. As we discussed earlier, equity with an emphasis on racial equity is our focus for the proposed budget. We began the budget process with the budget equity questions that we reviewed at our last budget committee meeting. Our managers were asked to evaluate their budget decisions using the budget equity questions and to provide their response to equity in their budget narratives. This evening, as we review the division budgets, we'll also be discussing budget equity impacts. This slide summarizes the line items in the proposed budget that can be directly identified as equity related. These specifically identified items have increased by 75% over the fiscal year 2020-21 adopted budget. Included in this list are $1.3 million in welcoming and inclusive line items, including dual language customer service team members, DEIA training, outreach activities, language interpretation, and community engagement. $1 million for programs and events, including funding for programs for underserved populations, cultural community events, nature mobile and rec mobile programs in underserved areas, and inclusion services. $232,000 in partner support for cultural activities and events, internships for BIPOC youth, and other partnerships in diversity. $444,000 in financial assistance to support access to our programs for all, and $823,000 in equity capital projects, including a large increase to ADA projects. This is only the beginning and reflects only the specifically identified costs. Equity is an organization-wide focus and will be considered in all decision-making district-wide. The list does not fully document the equity impacts of this budget, but it does begin to show the commitment we're making to ensure we continue our focus. All right, next slide, please. So if we have questions about general fund budget overall numbers or equity, I can take those at this point, or we can continue on with each of the divisions and take specific questions about the divisions at that point. Ashley?
Ashley. Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I'm an internal optimist, and while this year plus has been really, really hard, I do like to try to find the positives. And I do think that one of the positives is the acceleration of so many of our ADA compliant projects. And so I just want to acknowledge that, because to see, I asked for some examples because I think I just had a misunderstanding of exactly what we were doing, and the breadth and the depth and the types of improvements we made were really amazing. And so thank you, because accessible or access for all is one of our values, right? It's our foundation's mission. And so thank you for making lemonade, right? Because it would have taken a lot longer to get those things done had our facilities been open, right? And so as hard as that has been, and all that came with it, this is a positive that I see. And so thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, I'm going to keep moving then. Next slide, please. There are a number of organization changes being proposed in the budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. There are organization structure changes that impact the district, including the addition of the Park Services Division, which will include planning, design and development, nature and trails, and maintenance. We are formalizing department moves in the budget. Human resources moving out of business and facilities to administration. Community programs is moving to communications. Additionally, we have name changes. The Parks and Recreation Division will be Recreation Services. Business and Facilities Division will be Business Services. Security Operations is becoming Safety Services. Sports is expanding to Sports and Inclusion Services, and Operations Analysis is becoming Budget and Accounting. Aisha will be presenting the reorganization of Recreation Services Division later this evening. The proposed budget includes 5 new positions. Safety Services is proposing adding a full-time coordinator who will support the supervision of part-time Park Patrol team. This lead worker will assist with staff training, onboarding, and support of the district's ambassadorship approach. The Safety Services Department will utilize this position to strengthen the department commitment to equity by focusing on community partnerships. Adding this full-time position creates time for ongoing training that will assist in further integration of DEIA in the execution of all work. It also implements shared on-call time with the manager for after hours, weekends, and time off. Human Resources and Communications will be adding a shared administrative assistant who can support those departments' administrative efforts to allow directors more time to focus on DEIA initiatives for the district. Design and Development is proposing an additional park planner who will be added when needed to address project management of the Metro Bond projects. You will see later this evening that there are a number of general fund capital projects being proposed, which may require an additional planner to ensure that the district does not fall behind on projects funded by SDCs and the Metro Bond Fund. Timing of the addition of this position will be dependent upon the timing of Metro's approval of bond projects. The new Park Services Division includes a proposal for a Parks Director and for an administrative assistant to support that director. These positions are requested for partial year funding in fiscal year 2021-22. The positions are proposed to begin around fall of 2021. The proposed budget also includes conversion of all remaining regular part-time positions to full-time. This conversion addresses equity in hiring by providing full-time employment and benefits for these positions, supporting equity and employee retention. We will walk through each division's proposed budget at this point. Next slide, please. I'll start with the Board of Directors. The proposed board appropriation totals $304,755 for fiscal year 2021-22. This includes district costs for legal services and audit services, as well as district memberships and training costs for board members. There are no election costs budgeted for 2021-22. Next slide, please. Administration includes the Office of the General Manager, Communications, Safety Services, Community Programs, and Human Resources. The total budget for administration is almost $5.2 million. The Office of the General Manager Department will be responsible for progress on the 2021-22 district values and budget priorities. The department will support all departments in the district to ensure that equity, with a focus on racial equity, is a part of all decision making. Now, Holly Thompson is here to review the proposed budget for communications.
All right, good evening, everyone. The Communications Division works to ensure all patrons have access to information and the ability to engage and provide input on their park, recreation programs, trails, and natural areas. This past year, I'd like to highlight 4 big accomplishments for our team. First, completing the visioning process and delivering the Vision Action Plan for board adoption in September of 2020 was a milestone achievement. Second, in response to the national conversation on racial injustice, we came up with the concept of talking walls and message gardens, and then recruited community partners and successfully delivered these meaningful projects during the pandemic. This was truly the highlight of the year for us, and very, very, very meaningful work that we were so pleased to get to be a part of. Third, adapting all forms of our communications and marketing for the pandemic. We have been in pandemic pivot world over and over and over again, like everyone else, responding to critical health and safety messages, putting required signage in all of our parks and trails and facilities, and literally reinventing every step of the way how we promote district services, all with an eye on equity and making sure that we're communicating with folks when English isn't their first language and having to change our strategies left and right. Finally, we delivered an updated style guide this year, furthering our effort to unify our brand as a district. The updated guide includes new sections dedicated to inclusivity with great guidance to staff on how to further communicate institutionalizing our commitment to equity. A lot of great information in there talking about plain language and how to communicate effectively with the public. So key initiatives for the upcoming year include coordinating district-wide work with community-based organizations in order to strengthen the district's diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Tia, this is exactly what your question and comment before. It's why I was smiling and nodding my head, because that's a key part of our strategy. Expanding the Talking Walls program. We just found out this week that we are receiving a grant from the Research Foundation through our Tualatin Hills Park Foundation. So we're super excited about that. And I'm about to work with Cindy on finalizing another grant application in a week. We will be implementing a language access policy. It will be a data-driven approach to develop a tool to guide our translation practices moving forward district-wide. Really appreciated the comments and the questions about that. They came from the budget committee members. I have to say, I don't know what's to come. Stay tuned. We'll keep you engaged in the process, but it will be data-driven, meaning we'll really be digging down into the folks who most need access to materials in their languages and having a policy that guides exactly what materials need to be translated and into what languages. And then we'll continue to adapt, respond, and strengthen our marketing strategies and public engagement strategies, responding to the changing world around us with a commitment to equity. And we've got some pretty creative public engagement strategies going on right now. We're working with 6 businesses along Allen Boulevard, for example, and giving away coupons to their restaurants, vouchers for giving feedback at our Baker Loop event coming up. So really working on co-producing public engagement strategies and helping our local Latino amazing restaurants in the area. So the communications department is fully centered in equity work. We take an equity-centered approach to all of our work, from developing customized community engagement plans that address how to connect with underrepresented populations, to strong partnerships with community-based organizations, to delivering culturally specific events, programming, and expanding access. Next slide, I'd like to talk about safety services. So this is affectionately being transitioned to safety services, formerly known as Park Patrol. We worked really hard to come up with a better name, and we just love the name Safety Services. And I frankly love the picture of our staff right there painting the talking wall. That's what it's all about, interacting with the community, being part of the community, breaking down barriers, and leading with ambassadorship. So the mission of the Safety Services Department is to proactively engage patrons and staff using an educational ambassadorship approach. We support the district's DEIA initiatives by initiating positive contacts, providing assistance, and training staff, protecting district assets, practicing inclusive participatory decision-making, and thoughtful enforcement of district rules. And again, our focus is on education and compliance, less so on the traditional word you would think of when you hear the word enforcement. Our goals for the upcoming year include collaborating with staff to deliver emergency management training, expanding patron outreach through regular patrols of the trail system, and establishing a public relations initiative to deter vehicle break-ins, particularly during summer months. Our department is committed to the district's DEIA values. We are acutely aware of the importance of practicing cultural agility and leading with empathy in our work on enforcing safety rules. We've included in our proposed budget a full-time coordinator position, which will strengthen the department commitment to equity by focusing on community partnerships. It also allows our safety services manager to dedicate a greater portion of his time to critical public safety projects. You know, and I know this got a lot of attention from the budget committee, and I really appreciate that. I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, it's not easy to ask for a position, particularly at this really challenging time. But I can't emphasize enough how under-resourced we are in safety services and what a concern level I have about trying to provide the service that the district needs with the staffing level that we were facing. With just one FTE manager, there are a lot of times that there's nobody working Park Patrol, and we are so blessed to have Mark Pierce, and he'd probably be embarrassed for me saying this, but he moved this past year, and even when he moved, he was working and taking calls, because that's what having just one FTE in that department does to our staffing load. There's just never a time off. So we really need that position to help stabilize the training, the team, but also to enable the manager position to really do that district-wide emergency management focus and training. There's so much that we need to do to be preparing our staff district-wide and working on our regional responsibilities on emergency management. And there just isn't the capacity without the lead worker position to support those efforts. So finally, I'd like to cover the last part of our communications division, which is community programs, on the next slide. The Community Programs Department provides events for the community that are inclusive and support cultural diversity. The department also oversees THPRD's American with Disabilities ADA Transition Program, dog parks, historic facilities, community gardens, volunteer services, and special events. I really think of Keith Watson's stewardship of community programs as the potpourri. If there's anything that comes to the district that we don't know what to do with, it's likely getting assigned to community programs, and this team is amazing at picking up those curveballs. The Volunteer Services Program is also within community programs and expands opportunities for volunteer involvement at THPRD and strengthens our volunteerism in our community. Our goals for the upcoming year include expanding efforts to promote volunteer and professional Oh, I got too fast with my moving my finger. Okay, expanding efforts to promote volunteer and professional development opportunities for our Latinx community members through enhanced outreach, bilingual communication, and improved access to translation services. Launching our enhanced all ages workforce development program for volunteers interested in gaining skills necessary to enter the workforce, and continuing community engagement efforts to expand those dog runs and get more fenced off-leash dog options throughout the district. Our department was developed to support the district's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. Our proposed budget includes funds that reflect our commitment to equity through removing barriers to participation, efforts to increase diversity within programming, and increased focus on diversifying events to reach underserved areas of the district. We will continue to work collaboratively across departments to deliver upon removal of barriers identified in the ADA transition plan. And the capital budget includes $558,000 in funding for ADA projects in fiscal year 21-22. We will expand DEIA efforts through internal collaboration with community engagement and cultural inclusion staff to develop events and community celebrations that better reflect the demographics of our community. And with that, I have concluded.
Thank you. Right. And I will pick up with human resources, or unless, were there questions now?
No, we have time for questions after you, Christine.
All right, well then on to human resources. So in HR, our purpose, our whole reason for existing is to support the people who provide the programs and services to our community. Over the last 13 months, that has been a uniquely challenging but deeply meaningful opportunity of service for the HR profession. So to do that, we partner with leadership and our cross-district employee groups to understand operational needs and to support employees of all backgrounds and identities in bringing their whole selves to work here at THPRD. In the last year, I think what the HR team has been most proud of is leading with empathy. It has been a really tough time for a lot of people, and approaching those situations with empathy is a core value here at THPRD. So our goals for the coming year include continuing to disrupt and improve people services available to all employees and job applicants. Last year, we did update our protected leaves and accommodations program to take a trauma-informed approach that was also culturally grounded. So we're looking ahead to how we could continue to disrupt how we recruit, how we develop, and how we approach our employees. Also on the list is to facilitate negotiations between the district and our Employees Association to implement a successor labor agreement. Our current agreement is scheduled to expire in June 2022, which is right around the corner. We also have on the list in the proposed budget to conduct a review of the district's total compensation package and employer value proposition relative to the market. We're looking forward to supporting and facilitating training, wellness, and inclusion for all district employees. So in the budget, we have increased funds and staff time toward equity programs as well, which includes a $5,000 line from district-wide equity funds for the Welcome and Inclusion Committee and our affinity groups that are due to be launched shortly. And the funds are intended to be used by those groups for program supplies. Funds and staff time for marketing the district as an employer to underrepresented communities is allocated in a centralized budget. And we're already moving forward in collaboration with our fantastic communications team to increase the marketing and really do the outreach about how wonderful it is to be a part of THPRD. Also, funding for that compensation and classification study would provide for data-driven discussions with our labor group to continue the important work that we have been doing around pay equity. We're committed to continued learning, to continue having these conversations that are so important to move forward as a society by facilitating all staff learning opportunities through our sponsorship, which we intend to deepen of Partners in Diversity, as well as the Northwest Public Employers Diversity Conference. So the proposed budget for HR is shaped to continue leveraging this time of change and disruption in society as a window of opportunity to rebuild better. So next slide, please.
All right, so at this point, we can take questions on the board budget and the administration budget, which includes communication, safety services, community programs, and human resources. Any questions? Ashley.
I just wanted to make a small point about our board budget. Our committee may have noticed, right, that the stipend amount, like there's an increase, and so that was a change that we made last year, and that's also something we made as an equity priority from a board perspective, right? Is that we wanted to create the opportunity for more people to potentially be able to serve on our board by increasing what the availability of the stipend was, right? And so that you know, there's little things like that that we've been kind of trying, right, to permeate too, right? So that the board, we're also trying to show, and we made the trade-off to reduce our like travel and conferences budget, right, to offset that. So it didn't result in costing more. But just for our new budget committee members, I just wanted to share that.
Alfredo? Did you have a question?
I did. Holly, thanks so much for your overview and all this great information. I just had some questions about just if you could just be a little more specific about some of the community engagement plans that you're trying to use to do that outreach, especially to the Latinx communities, and what, you know, sort of you know, challenges or progress that you've made there, and just what's the lay of the land, basically, is what I'm asking for you there.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I have to say that the district is blessed to have an amazing cultural inclusion specialist, Lulu Ballesteros, on our team, as well as Jaspreet Chahal, who works on community engagement. And embedded within design and development, supporting design development and planning, is Liana Harden as well. So she's not within our department, but we consider her a cousin. And we all work really closely collectively. And we've developed a strategy of creating customized community engagement toolkits. So we're looking at projects as they come in. Right now, we're working most closely, I would say, with design and development and planning. So I would spotlight one project we're working on right now, which is the Baker Loop property on Lombard. And we know that there is a high concentration of Latino population and Arabic speakers as well within that community. And so we are working with this elementary and putting together, the principal there is being wonderful and super collaborative, and we're capitalizing on some of their networks to put together an event to get some initial outreach for that park. It's in the very, very early beginning stages. They just had a meeting last night, actually, as well. We're translating materials into multiple languages. We've been going door to door on Allen Boulevard, and we're partnering with 6 small, tiny restaurants and food trucks. And we're going to be giving away $10 vouchers that we're paying the restaurants directly, but folks who come by and talk to us will get a voucher for thank you for sharing with us your ideas for this park site, and please visit this local restaurant. So it's kind of the example of the kind of on the boots doing a geographical survey of an area where we might have a neighborhood park development or something going, really taking a an informed approach about what does the micro local neighborhood look like, who are the community leaders there, what are the institutions right there, what are the local businesses that we can help support and help get them excited about this new potential park development, and get their input early on. And so that's just one example of one project, and we're replicating that approach on different park sites throughout. And then broad-based, we're working really closely with community-based organizations. So we have a partnership with the Muslim Education Trust, and they will be supporting us on May 1st, which is like, I think 10 days away for registration. We've expanded our Centro de Bienvenida, which was a Spanish-only Welcome Center with Hello Call Language Line for anybody else. And we're working really closely with both our amazing base of Spanish speaking staff and volunteers, but adding in Somali, Kurdish, Arabic into the Welcome Center because we want to expand to other languages, and we'll continue to grow that. So we're trying to apply a district-wide lens on being more welcoming and inclusive and making language access a barrier non-existent if we can, through entering our programs and services, and then on the development side, really developing customized community engagement plans with partners and folks in the area, if that helps.
That helps a lot. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the effort to go kind of block by block and do that hard work. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And we had Felicita is next, and then Lee has a question after her.
Thanks so much, Holly. I'm so, yeah, this is for you, Holly. Come back on camera. I'm so excited that the safety department is being moved to communications, partially because, Holly, I know your values and I know your team, and I think that's much more aligned with the work that we want to be doing. So I'm super, super excited about that. And I'm going to share what I think everyone already knows is that, like, this is a time for critical reflection on these types of teams and how they interact with the community. And I kind of just wanted to put a flag that maybe in 6 months, you know, halfway through the year, we could have kind of a work session update about how this is going, what we've learned. I've interacted with several of the safety managements, the safety team members, and I mean, they are absolutely fantastic and community oriented and exactly what you would want representing our organization. At the same time, like, we need to continue to ask critical questions, get feedback from community about how interactions are going. So I'm never going to stop talking about that, but I appreciate all the intention that's here and all the thoughtfulness that went into this, and I'm just really excited to see how it goes.
Thank you. And I just, you know, the line that was in the little script that I read about we understand cultural agility, and, you know, our safety services staff completely understands what a barrier just their uniform can be, right? And so I spent about an hour on a walk recently with one of our Park Patrol staff, Angel, and we were talking about, like, his background and where he came from and how he came to Park and Rec. And he was talking about how much he's appreciated how Mark is just emphasizing the ambassadorship and giving examples of what it looks like. And he's like, I didn't know I could stop and play ball with kids, right? And I didn't know I could approach it that way. And so I think you're going to see a really different approach to it this summer. Like, I'm not joking. We're going to go to parks with soccer balls and interact with kiddos and really shift that dialogue to, you know, having an educated conversation and a gentle reminder of what the rules are. So, like, we have love him and leash him, and the, you know, sweet reminders to please to leash up your doggy. You know, we're looking forward to being able to get back to some different work that we want to do, like the security checks and leaving little notes on people's cars like, hey, we spotted your bag, be careful. And our staff are really excited about doing some of that proactive, friendly, helpful work. And I really believe with the adding on of the lead worker, it's really going to help us out.
Thank you, Holly.
Thanks.
And Lee, I think you were next.
I just want to echo that I appreciate your efforts on the safety effort. I remember in one meeting that someone proposed that we should have like more presence in our parks and trails, and I think this will really help, you know, bring people's awareness on safety. I just have one minor suggestions on the budget. I know that some of these historical information is not available because these departments and functions move between different departments. But if there's a way to, you know, somehow show it on the side so that we can compare, that would be great.
And I can respond to that. We're actually required under Oregon law standards to show the information, the historical information, where it was in the budget, when it was budgeted. So if you're looking for a particular department that moved, you can go to where it was before and you'll see the historical data for that department on that page. So I know when we're going through a reorganization like we are this year, it's really, really difficult to see those trends and to see the information, but we're required to actually report it that way. So we don't get a choice to show the historical data alongside the new data when we move a department.
You know, Lee, though, I want to respond to your comment and to Elizabeth's comment, just to acknowledge there aren't any KPIs in the communications department budget. And that's something we can definitely fix moving forward, because I think you're right, having more data and showing some of the results in the KPI from the earlier comment and just adding to yours now would be helpful. So I'm definitely willing to make that addition next year.
Thank you. And I think we are at a good stopping point. We're further than the 1 hour that I promised, but if we would like to take a small break at this point, this would be a good time for us to do that. Is, say, 5 minutes, come back at 7:35. Does that sound good? Perfect. All right. So we'll see you all back at 7:35. I know we have another minute before folks return. I do want to thank staff again for all of your work. It's a lot.
and to our budget committee members for being here and volunteering to do this heavy lift. I want to confirm where we're at in the agenda, Lori. Can you tell me?
We are on item 7B.
7, okay.
And we are halfway through all of our slides. We have 61 slides, so we're in a good place.
Super. Okay, in recognition of time, I think we will go ahead and kick this off again. Hopefully everybody has made it back. And Lori, do you want to go ahead and move on to 7B?
Yes, so next slide, slide number 30, which just happens to be mine. So lucky you, more comments from Lori. Business Services works to provide financial and operational integrity and credibility to the district. We do this through transparency in reporting and planning. The key initiatives for Business Services in the upcoming fiscal year are to continue implementation of the financial system. We've successfully completed the first phase of this project and are live on the employee timekeeping and payroll functions within the system. And I want to just take a minute to really thank the team that's been working on this implementation. It's 2 sentences in my presentation, but it has been a real heavy lift, and the team has been very dedicated and has worked a lot of long hours to get us where we are. So I applaud their efforts and am really appreciative of all the work that they've done. Our first payroll went off without a hitch. No, if any, questions about people's payroll. So to have that happen is really extraordinary, and I truly am appreciative of our team. The next key initiative is to begin needs assessment for the district registration system. Our plans for moving ahead with this assessment were slowed during the pandemic, but will be moving forward in the upcoming year. We also will support the update of the district's comprehensive plan and strategic plan and ensure that the district's pension funding policy is fully implemented. Next slide, please. The Business Services Division includes the Departments of Finance Services, Risk and Contract Management, Information Services, and Budget and Accounting. The total appropriation for Business Services is approximately $7.3 million. Next slide, please. The Finance Department is responsible for operational accounting activities, including payroll, pension, and retirement, accounts payable, cash receipts, as well as the investment of public funds, purchasing, and support of the accounting and budgeting functions. For the upcoming year, the department's goals include continuing the implementation of the new financial system. With the completion of the payroll phase of the project, we're now working to the finance section of the implementation, including accounts payable, purchasing, accounting, and financial reporting. We've included funding for limited term employee support for the implementation. The finance department supports the equity vision of the district through our support of the grant funding and compliance process. Grant dollars allow the district to expand programming for our diverse community, and finance ensures that our spending and documentation of that spending under the programs meets all compliance requirements. The proposed budget for the department includes continuing funding for the procurement administrator, whose role includes prioritization of equity in procurement. The administrator will be performing outreach to small businesses and implementing the district's self-defined minority business procurement process with goals of education and outreach to minority businesses in the local area. The department will also continue to develop and implement procedures in sustainability and equity in purchasing. These procedures will be emphasized in all capital projects. Supporting intergenerational equity, the department will continue to support the retirement programs for the district, including employee support related to retirement benefits. The department will also ensure that the district's pension funding policy is implemented and that the funding for the year is made in accordance with the policy. Finance is also supporting the $20,000 internal equity grant program that will fund a number of equity programs district-wide. Next slide, please. Risk and Contract Management Department's role is to effectively protect district property, patrons, and its personnel. This is accomplished through 3 areas of responsibility: safety and loss control, insurance administration, and claims administration. In addition, the department provides centralized administration of the district's public contracting program and the management of commercial and residential lease agreements. For the upcoming year, the department's goals include to coordinate with human resources to enhance the employee wellness program and to continue implementation of the state's electronic records management system software. Risk and Contract Management supports the district's equity vision through the support of the Finance Department in outreach to small, local, and minority business. We intend to expand and diversify the district's vendor pool and create pro-equity contracting processes that are visible and accessible to contractors. And I'd like to just take a minute to recognize our Risk and Contract Management Department. Not only did they do all of their regular functions this year, but really took on a stellar role of making sure that things moved along in relation to the pandemic, doing a lot of research on state requirements, supporting the purchasing process for PPE, and just overall support of the organization. And I truly do appreciate those efforts. Next slide now. The Information Services Department maintains and supports the district's technology infrastructure. They provide support in developing a work environment in which all staff will have the essential technology needed to successfully perform their work. The IS staff support the initial development and implementation of programs and also remain fully invested in their everyday use and helping support staff. Key initiatives for the upcoming year include to continue to monitor network security and safety of electronic records, to provide project management for the implementation of the district's new financial system, to begin development of the business requirements needed for replacement of the district's registration system, and to continue to document user guides for staff to better understand the capabilities and functionality of the current district systems. The proposed budget includes funding for technology for all employees, including access to email for employees, including part-time staff, to ensure equity district-wide. In support of finance work on procurement equity, the IS department will be developing tracking mechanisms and standards to allow for improved tracking and equity in procurement in the new financial system. To ensure the equitable distribution of resources, IS has developed standards for computer workstations and access to technology tools. And I just want to recognize too the work that they've done this year in the pandemic. Really within days, they were able to turn around and make sure that many of our employees were able to work seamlessly from home. Our systems are stable. It is very rare that we experience any sort of downtime, and we really have been able to continue our work without hesitation. So I truly do appreciate the work that they've been doing. Next slide, please. The Budget and Accounting Department is responsible for the district's accounting, financial reporting, performance measurement, financial planning, budgeting, business planning, and management of the district's non-financial data. Key initiatives for the upcoming year include to continue the implementation of the new financial system, including accounts payable, procurement, financial accounting, and reporting. To continue to support the district's grant strategy and ensure compliance and timely reporting of grant data. And to support the development of the comprehensive plan and strategic plan for the district. The Budget and Accounting Department designed and implemented the district's budget equity process for the current year. The department supports the equity vision of the district through leadership of the capital budget process, which includes a large number of capital projects addressing the district's ADA transition plan. The department's role in grant management also supports the district's equity focus. And this team too, I would like to recognize for the current year. Their ability to really jump in and create systems to be able to track the data that we needed to track for our federal grants was beyond amazing. And their support and their ability to really pull that information together, I think, was one of the success factors for us in obtaining additional grant funding. So I want to thank that team as well. Next slide, please. All right, with that, that's the end of my division, the Business Services Division. So I would be happy to take any questions that you have about those departments.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. This area, I mean, all of our areas have shown exceptional service throughout this year, but I think these areas have really, especially like risk and IT, through the pandemic, we have been able to maintain and do the work we're doing, due in part because of the due diligence that they've managed through. So thank you to all the staff, but really I do recognize through the pandemic, it's been exceptionally difficult.
Thank you. I appreciate that recognition. All right. So if there are no questions about business services, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Aisha Panis, who will be presenting Park Services Division. Oh, Lee, did you have a question?
Yes, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
I was just wondering, is there any coordination between like the safety within risk and contract management department and then the safety services within administration?
Absolutely. There's coordination with risk and safety, both between safety services. Mark and Mark, so Mark Pierce and Mark Hawkinen, both work very closely together, and Mark has been backup support for Mark Pierce when he needs to take some time off. They collaborate very closely on emergency planning and work very closely together on many issues risk related. And then Safety Services works very closely with all of our operational departments, including maintenance, recreation, sports, and making sure that they really have the support they need in doing their operations as well. So there's a lot of close connections between all of our departments.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, now I'll hand off to Aisha.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Heidi, for the very kind words about the folks I refer to as the unsung heroes of Park and Rec. On our side, in the recreation section, we are able to deliver services to the community, and we generally get some pretty solid feedback from the community when they sign up for our classes, they sign up for our camps, and so we can see that we're doing great things. But I think the business services functions, HR, communications, they're doing so much work on behalf of the organization that they don't generally get the recognition that the rest of us may get. So them, along with maintenance and everyone else, it's wonderful to be a part of this team, and thank you for that recognition for them as well. All right, so I am going to talk with you. I love seeing the little clapping hands popping up there. That's wonderful. I'm going to talk to you about two pretty big shifts for our organization, and I will start with talk about our Park Services Division. So the creation of the Park Services Division represents a new era for our district in which a single division is now responsible for the full life cycle of our parks. From the very beginning, when we're planning and we're acquiring property, through the development process to the ongoing care and oversight of our assets. The key initiatives for the Park Services Division in this upcoming fiscal year are to implement the district's new SDC, System Development Charge methodology, including updates to the Administrative Procedures Guide, to begin development of the Facilities Functional Plan, which will be the district's 6th functional plan following the completion of our comprehensive plan. This plan will specifically assess the life cycles of existing facilities, future needs for existing and new facilities, and strategies for meeting those needs. We will conduct a park amenities analysis to ensure we're meeting acceptable levels of service across the district, and we will support continued implementation of the district's various capital improvement programs. This district supports the district's, this division, supports the district's commitment to equity, and included in the proposed budget is continued funding for a community outreach position that will continue to work on public outreach and engagement to ensure input from our district's diverse population. The capital budget also includes a large number of capital projects addressing the district's ADA transition plan, including improving access to Harmon Swim Center, improving pedestrian pathway access in many locations across the district, and other projects. Supporting intergenerational equity, the division will be demonstrating its commitment to the maintenance of infrastructure by managing the restoration of the aquatic side of the Conestoga Recreation and Aquatic Center. Park Services will also be supporting the district's fully paid internship program for BIPOC youth by making available opportunities for students to gain experience in planning, maintenance, and operations roles. On the next slide, I will talk to you about the divisions, the departments that are included in the Park Services division. That's design development, planning, maintenance operations, and nature and trails. The total appropriation for Park Services is approximately $15.5 million. Next slide, please. Maintenance operations. This department coordinates all maintenance support activities for the Park District buildings, athletic fields, courts, parks, grounds, and fleet. In addition, the Maintenance Operations Department maintains school and community college sports fields and courts, which are available for public use. The key initiatives for the department in the upcoming year include continuing to coordinate and work on ADA transition plan items with a focus on improvements for safety and access, and repairing a number of facility maintenance items, including replacement of a portion of the Fano Creek Service Center roof, repairing the irrigation main line between soccer fields 3 and 4 at the HMT Recreation Complex, and replacement of the HMT Maintenance Shop parking lot. The Maintenance Operations Department is committed to equity in our hiring practices and supporting staff through employee development and training. The department fully supports an updated capital project decision-making process, which uses an equity lens to prioritize projects that break down barriers to recreation. The department ensures equity district-wide by providing consistent service standards across the district. And additionally, the department receives funding to continue to support and partner with the City of Beaverton in its safe parking program. Next slide, please. Nature and Trails connects people to nature through trails, natural areas, and stewardship of those natural areas. The department manages nearly 1,500 acres of natural areas throughout the district, including the Tualatin Hills Nature Park and Cooper Mountain Natural Area. Key initiatives for the upcoming year in Nature and Trails include implementation of trail-related improvements to enhance safety and ensure welcoming environments for patrons in natural areas, to begin an update of the Natural Resources Functional Plan following the completion of the district's comprehensive plan, and to implement recommendations based on outcomes of the trail inventory project currently underway. The department supports the district's commitment to equity through engagement of MWESB companies in contracting. The proposed budget also includes funds to support collaboration with other departments to create a Spanish language map of parks and trails. Next slide, please. Thank you. The planning department is responsible for land acquisition, overseeing the implementation of the grant strategy, and managing intergovernmental relations and monitoring land use legislation at the state, regional, and local level. The department's goals for the upcoming year include continuing to implement strategies for land acquisition in our park deficient areas and urban growth areas, continuing implementation of the district's grant strategy, leading the update of the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan. The planning team recognizes and acknowledges that historically land use planning has caused and furthered systemic racism in the built environment. Efforts this year will focus on ensuring the district's plans and planning processes break this trend and instead further racial equity through performing a demographic analysis of the district to learn how the district has changed and who is likely to live here in the future, centering plans, including the comprehensive plan update, on DEIA rather than having DEIA as a standalone item, and seeking grant funding to remove barriers to participation and providing access to underserved communities. Next slide. The Design and Development Department is responsible for the design, development, and project management for district-wide capital improvement projects that include parks, trails, and facilities. These projects are typically funded through the 2008 bond measure, the Sdc System Development Charge Program, grants, and general fund dollars. The department's goals for the upcoming year are managing construction of the Conestoga Recreation and Aquatic Pool renovation, master planning for the Metro Local Share capital projects, and continuing project management for numerous other SDC and bond-funded projects. Design and development activities and the operating budget have been established to support the district's commitment to racial equity and to advance the district's diversity and inclusion vision statement. To provide equitable support across all populations and areas of the district, the Design and Development Department projects will now take into account findings of the 2020 Vision Action Plan, which provides the district with a community-driven list of general design priorities for each new project. The department's engagement and partnership specialist leads the community engagement process for each project and continues to update department policies and practices to integrate racial and social justice into the process. The aim of these efforts is to establish and continually improve upon an intentionally inclusive and targeted outreach. With that, I'd like to pause and ask if there are any questions about park services.
Any questions? Thank you, Aisha, for your work and the work that the team does to keep us moving forward. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And unfortunately, you are still stuck with me because now I get to talk about recreation services.
Oh, we like you, so we'll stick with you.
All right. So recreation services, as you know, we're creating a new park services division. So what has been my division, the Park and Recreation Services Division, will now focus exclusively on recreation services. And we provide a broad range of recreation programs and special events that are responsive to the needs, abilities, and interests of our diverse community. Our programs, both individually and offered through partnerships, ensure social equity, provide opportunities for health and wellness, and conserve our natural resources. So the key initiatives for us in the Recreation Services Division are to continue to serve as a project sponsor for the update of the district's comprehensive and strategic plans to reflect the needs of our facilities and programming, to seek innovative methods of providing staff development opportunities through coordinated trainings that support continued learning and professional certification, like the Certified Park and Recreation Professional designation, increasing our emerging sports opportunities for youth and adults, and continuing to grow our utilization of the Thrive After School program, both within and outside of THPRD facilities. Recreation Services supports the district's equity focus and has provided specific support in the proposed budget for the following programs. You've heard it a few times already tonight, but developing that paid internship program, which is focused on introducing parks and recreation as a career pathway to youth who identify as members of Black, Indigenous, and communities of color. Expanding the offerings of our adaptive classes, as well as our Learn to Swim classes that are also offered for non-English speaking customers. Developing our programs for underserved populations and do work to break down barriers to participation consistent with our Access for All initiative. And continue to offer programs like our Fitness in the Park program in our underserved communities across the district, which provides free and inclusive recreation opportunities to community members of all fitness levels. Next slide, please. The Recreation Services Division includes our departments of aquatics, recreation, maintenance coordination, and our sports and inclusion services. Our total appropriation is approximately $26.4 million. And on the next slide, I will talk with you about the Recreation Division reorganization. So I'd like to share with you an overview of this reorganization of the division that we're proposing for consideration in the proposed budget. This reorganization plan comes from several months of conversations with staff members across the agency. It formalizes some changes that over the course of the last year have been adaptations to the pandemic. And the overarching goals for this structural change are to allow the district to recover from the dramatic changes we've experienced, to right-size our operations for participation levels we expect to see for the next few years, to preserve our flexibility in how we staff our buildings, and to take advantage of this hard reset we have all experienced to make some focused changes for the good of the agency and those we serve. Changes within this division include a move toward the shared supervision of facilities and repurposing of existing positions to meet certain goals, which I'll explain in greater detail on the next slide. No new funding is being requested for the additional positions in the Recreation Services Division. Thank you. I'd like to share our 3 specific areas of focus that have become more relevant through our pandemic adjustments and through efforts such as the Vision Action Plan. First up, the development of a centralized model for patron engagement. We anticipate creating a new Welcome Center, which is going to provide a centralized resource for information requests, park shelter reservations, and will become the work group responsible for coordinating our registration and working with the communications department on delivering Centro de Bienvenida. Secondly, as we open more pools, we intend to centralize our aquatic fitness under our district-wide fitness specialist. This had been our long-term plan for when that position was first created, and now is the time to make this change in order to prepare for a return to a typical operations level. The repurposing of an existing position into a full-time fitness assistant is similar to the model we currently use for adaptive and inclusive recreation, and we anticipate that this position would be brought on only once our fitness activities increase. Lastly, following several years of experiencing both a centralized and decentralized model of maintenance, staffing, and supervision, the proposed budget includes a staffing model that integrates building and aquatic maintenance positions under our recreation department manager, who will provide centralized leadership with the intent of encouraging collaborative relationships that best meet the needs of our community. The building coordinator position will continue to work closely with our trade staff, and those are staff that are remaining in our maintenance operation department. Next slide, please. Thank you. Aquatics provides our diverse community with a means to a safe, enjoyable aquatic experience that will last a lifetime. And key initiatives for this upcoming year include rebuilding our aquatic programming that can be offered consistent with state health guidance. And an example is that we're very limited in the type of instruction that we can provide currently. We are working every day to develop safe ways to provide that type of education, but swim classes and learn to swim were a very robust part of our aquatic programming that we've not yet been able to really kick back into under the current standards for indoor recreation. So we're looking forward to that rebuilding of our program. We also want to continue to focus on staff recruitment and training to meet the programming demands in our aquatic centers. And we want to continue the work associated with our affiliated sports program review and update our agreements with our affiliated aquatic clubs. And that is a tool that we use to also assign pool space allocations to those groups. And finally, we'd also like to continue providing lifeguard training programs. The Tualatin Hills Aquatic Center's budget supports THPRD's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility internally and externally. The budget includes a full-time bilingual customer service representative at the district's largest pool. The aquatics manager budget supports staff DEI training throughout the year, including webinars and conference opportunities. Additionally, the proposed budget includes funding for the following programs: providing free and reduced price swimming lessons subsidized by THPRD's financial aid program and the USA Swimming Foundation's grant funding of the Make a Splash program. Continuing to operate or expand the offerings of adaptive aquatics classes, as well as learn to swim classes offered for non-English speaking participants. And continuing to operate a life jacket loaner program for anyone in need of a life jacket, regardless of circumstance. Next slide, please. Our Sports and Inclusion Services Department works to provide opportunities for inclusion services, sports leagues, and recreation-related activities to park district users of all ages and abilities. The proposed budget shows the Elsie Stir Center and Garden Home Recreation Center moved from the Recreation Department into the Sports Department. The department's name will also be changed to Sports and Inclusion to better reflect the wide range of activities that are managed within the department. Key initiatives for the upcoming year include continuing work associated with the affiliated sports program review. This work includes coordination with the stakeholder work group and developing affiliation alternatives for the board's review later this year. Offering free primetime drop-in play on the district's synthetic fields to ensure that all patrons have the ability to access these amenities. Offering cricket opportunities to include youth and introduce the opportunity for patrons to have access to all types of sports. And reopening our Thrive After School program in fall 2021 at both the Athletic Center and Garden Home Recreation Center. In support of equity at the district, the department has included the following items in the proposed budget. It is to continue our virtual recreation center with paid and free classes to promote equity by removing financial barriers and allowing patrons to adapt program activities to their ability. Offering no cost or low cost summer camps in 2021 via the Rec Mobile. Expanding our Fitness in the Park programs to promote equity by providing programming free of financial, adaptive, and transportation barriers. And in our Recreation Department, thank you, where we plan, organize, and administer the operational and personnel activities of a comprehensive recreation program, we provide as many as 400 diverse recreation programs, fitness classes, aquatic swim classes, special events, preschool and after-school programs each quarter. We do have the maintenance closure at the Conestoga Recreation and Aquatic Center in the pool, which is planned for later this summer. And other significant changes in the Recreation Department include the movement of the Nature Center from the Nature and Trails Department to Recreation, and the transfers, of course, of LC Store Center and Garden Home Recreation to Sports and Inclusion Services. Key initiatives for the Recreation team are to continue with the teen-oriented RISE volunteer program at the Nature Center. And this RISE program you've heard about earlier tonight is the Realizing Interest Through Service Experience. And this is a leadership program where folks can support summer nature camps, nature mobile, and community engagement programs. And this is done in exchange for workforce development skills and experiences. We also will seek innovative methods of providing staff development opportunities through coordinated trainings that support continued learning and certifications. And we plan to continue to partner with our Northwest Regional Education Service District to provide spaces for students within each of our 3 9-month preschool programs. The center's budget support the district's commitment to racial equity and inclusion in the multiple program areas, both internally and in the services we provide to the public. We set aside funding for 7 to 9 special events at recreation centers that are free for the community and are celebrations of diverse communities. We have included budget to create a district-wide welcome center focused on providing exceptional customer engagement, coordination of the district's quarterly registration process, and supporting our bilingual registration events through Centro. We also identified budget dollars to develop programs for underserved populations that work to break down barriers to participation consistent with our Access for All initiative. That concludes our update on the Recreation Services Division proposed budget. I'm happy to pause here and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Aisha. Any questions?
Samira.
Hi, Aisha.
Hi.
I have a question regarding the internship, the BIPOC internship. What are your plans to make sure that the positions are advertised adequately, that it is a wide variety of the community and especially the underserved community?
We do anticipate posting these jobs and making clear that they are internships. We also have had initial conversations with Portland Community College with 3 of their members, 3 staff that all have different programmatic areas where they work to provide internships and connect students to internships. So we had that meeting. We identified different program areas within THPRD that mesh well with the programs they offer at PCC. So we anticipate working on job descriptions that do indicate that there is an interest in filling this with an internship position and that college credit is available, and then working very much with PCC to find students that that could apply for this. So the initial plans for this summer are more to focus in on building that relationship with that particular school, and we have the ability to open that up to other schools, other opportunities. But the idea right now is that it is a college age oriented program.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, Lori, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Perfect. Thank you. So the district also has other funds besides the general fund that are included in the budget. So I'll be reviewing a couple of those funds now. Several years ago, we received funds for mitigation work done on our sites to offset development impacts to wetlands elsewhere. The revenues were set aside in this fund to be a source of future maintenance work on these mitigation sites. While we're not receiving new revenue of this type, this fund houses the funds that may still be needed for future maintenance work. So we appropriate all of those funds. There's $188,000 in that fund for the district. Next slide, please. The debt service fund accounts for the annual property tax revenues and annual debt service payments on our general obligation debt. General obligation debt is debt approved by the voters to be repaid out of a designated additional property tax levy. This fund includes repayment of the $59.5 million outstanding bond balance from the $100 million 2008 bond levy. The levy amount is set based on the annual debt service payment required, and the rate is then determined based upon the total assessed value. The total levy amount needed is $8.1 million, and based on our projected growth in assessed value, this would result in a property tax rate of 30 cents per thousand, which continues to be well below our projected rate of 37 cents stated in the 2008 election materials. This lower rate is due to a combination of the favorable market conditions at the time of original issue and subsequent refinancings, including the most recent refinancing that closed on March 30th, which is providing an additional $1.9 million in savings for district taxpayers. Next slide, please. So after those two slides, if there's any questions about debt service fund or maintenance mitigation reserve, I'm happy to take those questions. All right, seeing none, moving on. The proposed budget for general fund capital projects totals $5.2 million. Including in the funding are the continuation of the financial system conversion and ADA projects totaling $533,000. Included in the ADA projects is work on access at the Harmon Swim Center. Aisha Panis will provide further information about the Conestoga project, which is also a good portion of our funding, on the next slide. Aisha?
Thank you, Lori. Well, as you see from the photos on the screen, Conestoga Recreation and Aquatic Center is a well-loved facility. Our staff have made valiant efforts to keep the center running, but we are now at a point where patches and piecemeal repairs are no longer effective or efficient. To better accommodate our community members, the proposed Conestoga project would address several deficiencies identified in the district's ADA transition plan, which was approved in 2016. These improvements include the installation of pool handrails to facilitate safe entry and exit from the pool, and replacement of the leisure pool lift. In addition, the project features replacement of the below and above water lighting systems, the construction of additional individual changing rooms, which has been a patron need voiced through a variety of outreach efforts. And there's also a need to replace items that have simply reached the end of their life expectancy, such as the pool deck, pool tanks, slide, pump components, and paint, and to upgrade radiant hallway heating. Fortunately, the steps we've taken in planning for the Conestoga improvements have put us in good stead to move forward. We have developed construction documents that we expect to put out for bid this summer. The cost of this renovation is significant, estimated at approximately $2.1 million. The staff level review identified additional funding resources in the current fiscal year budget, project savings in the proposed FY 21-22 budget, and the district's replacement reserve to help fund this project. Staff has evaluated several options, including phasing these improvements over several years to spread the financial impact. We've determined it is not cost effective to repair some of the deficiencies independently, as they rely on other improvements to occur or would damage previous repairs. Phasing the projects would also require repeated pool closures, which would inconvenience patrons and impact our facility revenue. While facility closures are never ideal, the summer of 2021 presents an opportune time to complete the entire renovation project, as the COVID-19 pandemic will likely continue to hinder facility attendance into the latter part of the year. Taking advantage of what is anticipated to be a low revenue period to complete the project ensures that THPRD will be able to serve patrons without interruption once our center is more fully open. During the construction project, the dry side of the facility would remain open for fitness classes, childcare programs, and camps, and outdoor pools would be able to absorb aquatic activities. Staff anticipates the renovation to begin in August and to take approximately 3 months to complete. Happy to answer any questions about this if you have them. Ashley.
Can I just ask a really specific question about the pool deck? Is that like, it's like sand, it's like just deteriorating on the left there?
It does break down over time. The circular grooves in the deck do break down. And it is it's a deck that's been in place for a while now. So this is one of those end of life expectancy items that we would like to replace in this. And to do the work that we need to do with lighting and other improvements, we have to cut this deck. And as you can see with the pattern, it would be difficult to replace that as is. So having the ability to replace the entire deck as part of this project, we think would result in a wonderful outcome.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's tough to maybe choose a closure right now, but I also know that it's really the best time. So thank you. And thank you for finding a way to make this happen now.
Thank you. Samira?
I just have a comment. I live in this area. My kids were frequent flyers there. Everyone had their swing lessons. And I was talking to all my neighbors here, and everyone is so excited that this is happening because it was long overdue, and they love it because all our kids went to Southridge and did swimming at Conestoga. And so thank you so much for this. This is really appreciated.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, I will turn this back to Lori.
Thank you, Aisha. The appropriation in the Metro Local Capital Fund reflects local capital dollars to be received from Metro from the November 2019 Metro bond measure. The district is currently working to identify projects to be proposed to Metro for funding. And as we work with them, what we understand is that this will be similar to a granting process. So we'll submit a proposal and they will say yay or nay and allow or allocate the funds. So we have not specifically identified projects in the budget for this fund because of that process. Next slide, please. Projecting SDC revenues continues to be like trying to hit a moving target. We base our estimates on projected permit activity from the city and county, but what is difficult to predict is the actual timing of the permits by fiscal year. We're continuing to leave a significant part of our available SDC resources as uncommitted to act as a buffer against resource shortfall and make sure that we still have adequate resources in this year to fund all of our project commitments and leave an available carry forward into next year. The carryover projects shown in the proposed appropriation are all projects that were included in the fiscal 2021-22 adopted budget. We're continuing to reflect phases of project development to allow us to provide funding for park master planning and design earlier, even if total funding for the construction is not immediately available. The intent is to slightly accelerate project development, but also better match SDC appropriations with the actual work being done. We're continuing to track existing and projected resources within the new urban growth boundary expansion areas such as North Bethany and South Cooper Mountain. While we're not legally required to spend all the funds collected in these areas within them, the financial plans for the adopted community plans in these areas assume that the park SDC fees collected there would fund the necessary park infrastructure. As such, if we use funds collected here to fund other projects elsewhere in the district, we're leaving a funding shortfall in these areas to be addressed in the future. So while the projects in the CIP have been prioritized based on the criteria in the new parks functional plan, we've also run through the filter of available SDC resources, both in these areas and outside of them, to determine the actual projects to be funded in the 5-year CIP. And we just took an update to the CIP to the board recently. The updated CIP was the basis for selecting projects to be funded in the proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget. And we've funded all of the items projected for this year in the CIP. Next slide, please. The appropriations in the bond capital fund represent remaining balance of the $100 million levy passed by the voters in 2008. The resources include the remaining portion of the debt issued plus premium earned at issue and interest earned on the unspent funds. We've estimated the amount of carry forward based upon expenditures to date. The bond capital section of the proposed budget book has been updated to reflect a summary of all the projects and acquisitions funded by the bond dollars. Gary Keck and Bruce Barbarash will be presenting a summary of these projects and outcomes at our next budget committee meeting in May. Next slide, please. All right, we are to the end of my slides. So if there are questions about capital, general fund capital, bond capital, SDC, Metro Bond Fund, I'm happy to take those questions at this point. Samira, I think it's a leftover hand, but I'll just check and make sure that you don't have another question.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Lori, for all of your work here.
You're welcome.
We'll move forward if there are no questions.
Ashley?
Thank you. I want to make sure I'm just piecing together correctly the Metro thing. Sorry, I keep turning off my light. It's really bright. So we had noted, right, that we will probably bring on a planner, right, to help. And that's specifically around this. And
Yes.
that's once we know more around the criteria, and I know that we have ideas of what we might do, but that we're waiting for criteria to establish what projects we would submit. Then those, like, they have to get approved by Metro.
Yes, it's like a grant process.
Okay.
So we would submit a proposed project. They'll take a look at that and make a determine as to what portion of that project is eligible under their source of funding. So it's going to take some time, I think, both for them to define what all the requirements are, because they haven't finished defining all the requirements, as well as for us to pull together and identify the best projects and get those submitted for approval. So, so the position won't be hired until we know for sure that we're ready to get moving on projects, and then we're allowed a certain amount of that funding to support project management.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I think we can move to the next slide now. And I will hand it back over to you, Heidi.
Yes, sorry about that. Let me get my controls right here. So moving on to budget committee recommendations, I'm going to now open the floor to our committee for any recommendations regarding the district's proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget. If you have thoughts or recommendations for this budget, please raise your hand and chime in now. And I just want to recognize that I know many of you submitted questions in advance that staff, as we were able to review the budget document, that big, thick document, many of you submitted questions for clarification, and thank you, staff, for responding to those. But if there are additional recommendations, questions, please put those forward now. I'm good with silence for a moment.
My mom used to always say, we had 5 boys in the family, that silence is golden.
Well, as a teacher, instructor at the college level, you let people think about what they may have. And I do see that, Elizabeth, you have a comment, question. Hand raised.
It's another comment. I can't help myself. And it's that in reviewing, especially the debt management, I just wanted to also applaud the district for being really excellent stewards of taxpayer dollars, being able to review those numbers and seeing how your experts were able to track interest rates and refinance and save substantial dollars was really impressive. So I wouldn't be, a budget person without taking a look at that and just really complimenting the district on their sort of assertive role in saving taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. I would like to acknowledge as well, Lori has done some amazing work for us, not obviously just within COVID, with having to literally redo our budget, which is, very significant process. And we're in the works for the next revision, of course, because recognizing where we're at. But Lori, I think it'd be worth commenting too, the rating process with the recent refinance we just went through and those communications and how all that was accomplished.
So yes, we do have a strong team that supports us with both bond counsel and financial planning firm that helps us with all of these presentations. But we did go through a full rating process with the most recent refinancing, and they affirmed our rating, did give us a negative outlook, but affirmed our rating that had existed with the prior financing that we submitted. So we were thrilled to go through that process and have them be so complimentary about the district's response to the pandemic, the strong financial controls and support that we have for the district, as well as they were very complimentary about the steps that we've taken with the pension funding plan and with addressing the funding issues of the pension. So I think that we did everything that we could as a district to really continue to show the ratings agency that we have a strong financial process here, and they were really couldn't have been happier with the steps that we've taken. So that was a nice affirmation of the things that we're doing as a district to continue to strengthen our financial position.
That's excellent.
Thank you.
And a lot of work.
Any other questions or comments? I'm going to add one comment. Well, Wendy, I see your hand raised, so you go ahead. Unmute yourself. Wendy? I can't see you on my little camera here, but there you go.
I think she's trying to speak, but we're not getting the
Audio
of it.
Okay, Wendy, we're going to try to jump back at you. Suzanne, I see you have your hand raised as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo some of the comments being made, having done and put together budgets for a really long time. It's a lot of work, and I just want to say you guys do an excellent job putting this together. One area where having seen what the impacts that we're seeing related to COVID in our park programming, it's really significant. I think my last forecast was that we were down about 5 million for the year. And I think what I would like to stress to the board and to my fellow budget committee members is when your finance folks are talking to you about the importance of reserves, this is exactly why. When you have an event like this occur, which has been uncontrollable and we haven't been able to predict what's going to happen, having adequate reserves to rely on. People are very tempted to jump at the reserves in good times, but when we see how important they are in times like this. So I just wanted to say that, and as a fellow finance director, it's critical that we don't get too excited when we start to not remember how important maintenance of reserves are for exactly what has happened to us over the last 18, well, I guess we're not quite at 18 months yet. It seems like 18 years, but I just wanted to voice that. I'm sure Lori appreciates that.
Suzanne,
thank you.
I think many of us appreciate that, especially Lori, and thank you for your expertise and work on this committee and that perspective of like, we have never gone through anything like this in the past. So the work that our team has done has been exceptional. And I'm just going to add here, we need to give kudos to this team because the Government Finance Officers Association has given Distinguished Budget Presentation Award to this group of people for doing the work they're doing. Only 216 special districts throughout the nation and Canada have been awarded this. And this is the 16th year that THPRD is being recognized for the work we're doing with our budget and really being mindful about how we are serving our community and responding to the community. So Lori, team, Doug, management, employees, you're doing exceptional work.
Thank you.
That all said, I am still going to open it up to questions and comments.
Were we able to get a hold of Wendy?
Well, I've been having a text conversation with her. We're trying to reach Clint as well. I think it, she's just having some technical difficulties. I'm not sure we're going to get there. We'll see.
Did you try it again, Wendy? Because I didn't see your mute button there before. Oh, you did. Because now your mute button is there. So I wonder.
We might be able to read her lips at this point.
Oh, no.
Well, Wendy, what I think I'd like to do is if we can get your comments to Lori and Doug and myself, if that would be sufficient initially for conversation. I know it's not what we plan, but we really do want to be able to put that on the record. So,
or is there not just a phone number she can call in, Doug, to call into the meeting?
Yes, I
or
believe
Jessica. Maybe Jessica has the number.
Yeah.
And I know that
it's in the chat, and then we could read them out loud.
In the meantime, Wendy, we want to know your questions, whether you're able to dial in or put them in the chat. Are there other comments or questions related to, or recommendations related to the budget?
And if I could note too, she just texted here that she just wanted to compliment the team. I'll take a screenshot of that as evidence as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. You gotta love technology. Any additional recommendations?
I see another hand. I'm not sure who it is.
It's Lee.
Lee, go ahead.
Hi, I just also want to kudos to the team and the staff and how well they managed the budget and the financial positions. And I think it really shows from the credit rating that we got how strong we are financially. I have a small suggestion, not directly related to budget. It just when I moved to the area, one thing that I really missed that I used to have was I used to participate in Zoc Sports. It's a platform where people can sign up and have social league or sports games. It's kind of like a pickup game, but in a more organized way. So people can sign up and they kind of form teams for people. I think it's a great way to kind of integrate people into the community, and you could do some intentional signing to match up people with diverse backgrounds, and get more people from like the minority groups to join and participate.
Thank you for that recommendation, Lee. Can I ask, is that a certain municipality or area that you lived in that we can maybe take a look at them using? I'm sure our staff know. I'm just unaware.
Oh, I used them when I was in New York City.
Okay.
I think they have it in like a few other cities too.
Great. Thank you for the recommendation. Any additional recommendations regarding the 2021-22 budget? Okay, I don't see any show of hands here. So I'm going to move on to our next agenda item, which is our next budget committee meeting, May 19th, 2021. And this will be to consider approval of the 21-22 budget. And please mark your calendars tell your friends and family to join us. It's an open public opportunity. We'll be meeting at 6 p.m. that evening online. So, and that being said, do I need to ask for a motion to adjourn, or can I just adjourn this meeting myself?
You hold that power.
I'm going to ask, no, I don't want to have the power. I ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting, and I'll leave it to my colleagues here on the budget committee to make that motion and second it.
This is Felicita. I'm happy to make that motion.
Thank you, Felicita. And anyone to second?
I will second. This is Samira.
Thank you, Samira. And those in favor, if you want to raise your hand or say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to adjourning at 8:34 on this lovely evening? Thank you for being here tonight. Meeting is adjourned, and really appreciate your volunteer service and work. And staff, thank you for everything you do. And we will see you all back here on May 19th.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Good
Enjoy the
night.